Alrighty, well, hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. This is a little different, you can see, than our standard setup. I am not currently in the city of Seattle. I'm here in the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. Was here to cover the NWSL title match between Kansas City and Portland. Unfortunately, our rain didn't make it, as you obviously know. But the flight had been booked, the plane ticket had been booked, and the credential had been approved already, so I figured I might as well go and experience the thing. So sitting here, it's 9:58 over here on the East Coast, about 7 o'clock, 6:58 over on the West Coast. Getting this out of the way. Unfortunately, I can't have Belle with me for this one, but hoping to have normal things by next week. Happy Halloween to those who are going to go and enjoy it. You know, I don't have a costume, unfortunately, and I'm down to my one hat this week. So it's tough, but the show must go on. You know, we don't skip around here. So taking that all into consideration, we're going to go right into our Seahawks news here. And our Seahawks had a good week. It's you know, coming into play against the 6-1 Giants, I didn't expect something like this. The inactives list was interesting, not too bad, but well, it could have been worse than this. It was. We'll look at the inactives here with offensive tackle Jake Curran, right running back Tony Jones Jr., wide receiver Penny Hart, fullback / linebacker Nick Bellore, defensive tackle Miles Adams, and cornerback Sidney Jones IV, and safety Tease Tabor. So we look at this game here against the Giants, the 6-1 Giants with Saquon Barkley. The Seahawks are able to win this one 27-13. Just a really solid all-around game for the Seahawks. Able to really stop the run, limit Daniel Jones, tried to effectively make New York one-dimensional, and they were to an extent. Seattle had some trouble defending the pass here and there, but overall they did a good job. They did a good job at the defense, had a pretty solid game. And just overall, they looked good in this game. They really did. Tyler Lockett had a few miscues earlier in the game, but was able to make it up for it with a touchdown later in the game. You know, I just kind of figured as the game went on that he would be able to bounce back and sort of figure things out. He's been reliable for Seattle for years now, and so it made sense that he would be able to come back and have a sort of rebound here. And this is a pretty damn good game. I mean, the 13 points, all-around game, forced, I believe, 3 fumbles, recovered 2 of them, 2 of those on special teams. Uchenna Nwosu had a big game. Boye Mafe had a great game. Gino was pretty efficient. Ken Walker had a solid game. It wasn't the big one. Didn't break this huge runoff. But this was an all-around solid team win for Seattle against a 6-1 Giants team that's been rolling along pretty damn well. They hadn't been beat by they only lost the one game. But it was pretty impressive. It was a pretty impressive win. Really happy with it. I will take it. As I've admitted throughout the season here, I was wrong. I was openly wrong about Geno Smith and the Seahawks team, and I'm happy that I was. I'm really happy that they continue to prove me wrong. Geno's been really efficient throughout the year, has managed games well. The locker room respects him. Kenneth Walker's really showed out. The defense in the last few really turned things around. After initially it was like, hey, man, what are we going to do with this defense? So really solidly happy with what's been going on lately with our Seahawks here. So we'll look to offensive players of the game here. Bill and I went with wide receivers. I went with Tyler Lockett, 63 yards and a touchdown. That late touchdown really ices it to make it 27-13. Made it 20-13, gives Seattle a 7-point lead in the fourth quarter. DK had 55 yards on a touchdown. DK, the first touchdown of the game. And, these were two guys who came into this game as questionable. They came into this game having struggled throughout the week with injury. It seemed like they might not play at all. And they were able to figure things out and come and play this game. I want to apologize. I don't know if I've got. There we are. Sorry, I admit there's the game. So yes, we both went with wide receivers on the offensive side of the ball. Kenneth Walker had a solid game, but I had to go with Tyler here after bouncing back from some earlier sort of issues in this one. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I went with Uchenna Nwosu. Uchenna, 6 total tackles, 5 solo, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 QB hits. Really has been a really, really solid offseason signing. Wasn't a big, massive contract. Has been a solid contributor throughout this year. Solid along the edge, something that Seattle has needed. Bell went with Cody Barton on the inside linebacker spot, 6 total tackles, 5 solo, and 1 sack. So going with similar position groups here, with us going with wide receivers and then linebackers for offensive and defensive players of the game here. So, there we go. We look to now some injury-related news. Unfortunately, on the 20th, well, not unfortunately, injury news gets me used to bad news. On the 26th, flurry of moves here as defensive end LJ Collier was activated from the injured reserve, as well as cornerback Trey Brown and running back Travis Homer returning to practice. Both had physically been unable to perform from practice, so it's good to see Trey Brown and Travis Homer. Travis has been solid with picking up blitzes. It's like a key trait for him. And Trey Brown, an exciting rookie, second-year corner now. So really, with Woolen and Kobe Bryant, really excited to see what Trey Brown is able to do with the current cornerback group. We look here, we already saw the inactives list, so we'll go over to injuries sustained against the Giants and a couple of things here. Pretty early on in the game, center Austin Blythe left with a knee injury but did end up returning. Linebacker Darrell Taylor left the game and was unfortunately not able to return with a hip injury. We're still waiting for the extent of that. And Ryan Neal, safety Ryan Neal, ended up experiencing cramping at the end of the game. It looked like he might have been injured in the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter, but unfortunately it was just cramping and it was nothing, hopefully, that will be too serious, because Ryan Neal made some really solid plays in this game as well. Really excited to see what he was doing throughout this contest against New York. So we look over to team-related notes here on the 26th. Ken Walker was named the FEDEX Ground Player of the Week for his performance against the Chargers. Had some incredible numbers against LA. If you haven't seen it already, there was the pretty viral photo of Ken Walker sort of giving the peace sign while this lady in Chargers gear is giving him the double bird. So that was kind of fun. But on top of his pretty solid day, I believe it was like 150 plus rushing yards. Ken Walker averaged 7.3 yards per carry against LA, and is now third in the league in yards per carry on the season, 6.1. This was for his performance against LA. I don't know where he stands right now, but 6.1 yards per carry is pretty damn good. So hats off to Ken Walker there. Also in team-related notes on the 26th, Pete Carroll voices his support for grass on NFL fields after injuries piled up against the Chargers at SoFi Stadium. This would be big, obviously, with the Men's World Cup coming here in 2026. The pitch for, and grass has already kind of been part of the deal for Seattle to host games here. The grass needs to be on the field. So to have that at Lumen Field, because not having grass at Lumen Field was actually a Seahawks discussion back in the day when it was Seahawks Field, Seahawks Stadium and then Quest Field. That was, I believe that was a Mike Holmgren deal. So, to have grass would be big, not only for the Seahawks, but, the Sounders and Rain playing in Lumen Field. So win, win, win. There are 3 wins here for that stadium and those teams that play there. So hoping that gets some sort of regard, and that's just not a comment that Pete makes and then we hear nothing of it. So we'll hear about that and we'll see about that. We'll keep you guys updated on anything that follows that sort of situation. But now we'll head over to league-related news. On the 30th, Robert Kraft addresses anti-Semitism. The Patriots owner urges football fans to stand up to Jewish hate in a TV ad during Sunday's games. I am the guy, so I stick to my sports. But, I just as a human being, in this world that we live in, it's, if you're supporting anybody that's anti-Semitic and you know who we're all talking about, it's just, that's not a good look whatsoever. Why? That's just, bottom line is obviously don't do that sort of thing. But I don't know, why it would be okay to judge a whole, a whole population of folks off of some people. That's not how we do things. The stereotypes are, and none of us like stereotypes, right? So, yes, if you can support the guy who's anti-Semitic, I don't care what sort of music he makes, he's a bad guy. He's not a good person. So, anyway, we'll look towards league-related news. Continuing on the 30th, Alvin Kamara could be on the trade block for the Saints. The Saints want at least what the Panthers got back when they traded away Christian McCaffrey. If they do deal their star running back, the Bills have called about Kamara, and the Saints turned down their offer or declined their call. So that's interesting. If the Bills can, I don't know who stops them. That'll be pretty messed up. Anyway, we got to get moving along here. We look towards next week for our Seahawks, who currently sit at 5-3 on the season, first in the NFC West. Their next matchup is on the road against these Cardinals that we saw weeks ago, but unfortunately now they've got DeAndre Hopkins, so it becomes a bit more difficult. And it's down in Arizona. So that's on November 6th at the Cardinals with a 1:05 p.m. start time. That'll be an exciting one. Any game against the Cardinals seems to be exciting, and it's a big one. These division games where it seems like you're not, dominating the division so far. You lost one game to the 49ers. You beat the Cardinals once. So you got to get as many of these division games as you can. You can't really mess around. We will now head over to our Mariners sort of free agency preview. Some of this is tough just because Jerry DiPoto often gets guys that we're not necessarily expecting. Kurt Casale at the trade deadline, Matt Boyd, Jake Lamb. Wasn't really sure about the Frazier deal. Robbie Ray wasn't a guy that we were expected to sign at the beginning of free agency. So this is tough. This could be really tough, but it sort of seems like this year there's some really minimal necessarily needs to look at for this Mariners team. So we're going to look at some potential departures for this team, guys that might not fit on this roster, guys that might not want to be on this roster next year for whatever reason. But we look at the potential departures. Kurt Casale could be one of them. He was a guy that was acquired at the trade deadline and really didn't do much of anything for Seattle. He hit a home run at Seattle at home once. It just wasn't sort of what he was expected to be. I don't imagine when Koto traded for him. Adam Frazier, we talked about this last week. I keep weighing the possibility of this happening. And, the more I talk about it, the more I'm not sure. The more I'm not sure because obviously Seattle has talked about wanting to move a shortstop to second base in free if they can. But the first thing, amongst the 4 that are going to be available, if anybody wants to do that, first of all, it's like if you can't get one of these guys to move to second base, Are you asking JP to move to second base if you can bring one of these guys in? You know, JP did have a really down year defensively. So it's like, what are we? Is that something that would be okay? Would Frazier be okay coming back as like a utility guy? Because we know he can play in the outfield, and you know that versatility is something that Seattle really likes in their players. It won before anything. Does Frazier want to be here? You know, so that's a big discussion. And the more I think about it, the more I think about ways that benefit one side and ways that benefit the other. So I don't know. That'll be really something to keep an eye on. And I'm not too entirely sure, but if Seattle is able to get interest from one of these shortstops, I think it might be game over for any return of Adam Frazier. And I know that might upset at least one Frazier fan that I know that. So I'm sorry about that. Carlos Santana is a guy that's interesting. I know he was a great veteran presence for this team. He's good friends with Julio. He was able to help us win, like legitimately was a major factor in several of these games midsummer. Was able to help out at first base when Ty France was injured and wasn't able to play or to give him rest days. But I think what the Poto said was if we've got room, and it makes you think, it's like if you're really able to upgrade as much as you'd like, Carlos might miss the cut. And I really liked having Carlos on this team, but it sounds like there might not be the room here. We look over at outfield. Mitch Haniger is an interesting name. I know that new general manager Justin Hollander said that he's had a lot of calls with Mitch's agent. He said he loves Mitch. He talks with Mitch's agent quite often. But Mitch is going to be a free agent for the first time in his career. So it'll be interesting for him to see if he just wants to get a vibe from free agency and see what's going on. If Seattle is able to get a certain guy that we're going to look at here, and they put him in right field, I imagine, what do you do there? So it's interesting. The franchise has not been necessarily long-term committal with Mitch. When Mitch is healthy, he's been an MVP candidate. I believe the 2 years he's played the most games. So you got to wonder about these things. You really have to wonder what's going on with this. I would imagine Mitch is back next year. I don't know what sort of deal it's on, but I would imagine he's back. And then our final sort of potential departure here from our list, excuse me, is relief pitcher Matt Boyd. Matt Boyd, he was solid to have in this. He ate up some innings as a former starter, Seattle guy. But with the acquisition of Luke Weaver, Chris Flexion is still technically in this pen. If Seattle really wants to upgrade everywhere, maybe they go and get another reliever. There's a certain guy we'll look at. Matt Boyd might be the odd man out here, considering I don't believe he's on contract. So that's our list of potential departures: Kurt Casale, Adam Frazier, Carlos Santana, Mitch Haniger, and Matt Boyd. We'll look over to potential additions. Now, this is like best case scenario. We're going to look at the 4 shortstops here, kind of weigh the options and look at the stats. Someone that, would change this franchise, and then a potential return for a reliever here. So we're going to look over here at I apologize, folks. It's tough with this freaking hotel Wi-Fi. There it goes. Okay. We're going to look over here at the first possible option at the shortstop to second base route. Trey Turner. Turner has said he'll likely stay in Southern California if he stays on the West Coast, or he'll head back to the East Coast. He doesn't seem like a West Coast sort of guy. Has said this, while I believe in regards to upcoming free agency, so it doesn't sound like a sort of move up here to Seattle is one that's likely unless they're able to really sell him on it. His notable 2022 stats is 4.9 wins above replacement, a 298 batting average, an 809 OPS, 16 errors committed this past year, which isn't really good, a 969 fielding percentage, and a -1 defensive run saved. So kind of struggling on the defensive end here, and not exactly looking like he'd want to come here anyway. So I weigh Trey Turner out of this discussion. I don't imagine he'll end up in Mariners blue. This is who I would like to see more, the most in a Seattle uniform is Xander Bogaerts. I don't really have much to dispute any sort of reasoning he'd come here. Obviously, you'd have to pitch the second base idea. He hasn't been happy with the contracts he's been offered by Boston. Some of his notable 2022 stats here: a 5.7 wins above replacement, a 307 batting average, an 833 OPS, 10 errors committed, a 983 fielding percentage, and 4 defensive runs saved. So a lot more solid and sturdy on the defensive side of things. This is who I would ideally like to see, join this clubhouse. A veteran guy. He's won a couple World Series. He knows what it takes to win. And he's just kind of an all-around solid guy as a baseball player. So we look here now. Xander Bogaerts is my ideal guy. When looking at the stats here on Dansby Swanson, I was really intrigued. Atlanta does have a lot of money tied up already in their young core, meaning Swanson could be on the way out, could want to explore free agency after winning it all with Atlanta now, a year ago. Some notable stats here for him: a 5.7 wins above replacement, 277 average, so not too great, 776 OPS, only 8 errors committed, a 986 fielding percentage, and 9 defensive. On the defensive side of things here this past year for Dansby Swanson. Offensive side of things, not too bad. Not as good as the other guys on this list. But I don't know. I don't imagine he'll end up here, but Swanson and Bogaerts are your most likely options from what I can imagine. And this guy last year, we include him in the list because we're going to do our due diligence, just as I imagine the Mariners have before. But I highly, highly doubt that he ends up in Seattle. It's Carlos Correa. Likely not going to become a Mariner. The Seattle did reach out last year, just in their due diligence, and didn't seem like there was any interest really reciprocated. And I know people complain about the cheating thing. I get it. It happened. It's over. You do want to become a better baseball team. I'm sure Carlos would help you with that. I just don't know if that's something that either side will get done, let alone Carlos would be interested in that sort of thing. So his notable 2022 stats: a 5.4 wins above replacement, 291 batting average, an 834 OPS, 8 errors committed, a 984 fielding percentage, and 3 defensive runs saved. So as I've said here, I really imagine if you're able to work this out and get things to go your way, it's going to be Bogaerts or Swanson. I take Turner and Correa out of this. I don't imagine you're going to be really in on either of those guys. And also the fact that among shortstops, you're competing with about 9 other teams. 10 teams want these guys from the general interest. That's preliminary interest. And there's 4 of them. So 6 teams are going to miss out. You don't want to be one of those teams, but we'll see. We'll see about that sort of thing. We look over here now towards the outfield. Now, left field's kind of already clogged up. You've got Jesse Winker out there looking to have a bounce-back year. Jared Kelenics played there. Sam Haggerty played in left as well. Right field, if you're not going to bring back Mitch Haniger and you really, really want to swing for the fences, you really want to kind of change how this franchise might be viewed, how your current team might be viewed. This is all fantasy. I don't imagine this happens, but he'll technically become a free agent, unless he signs with New York, which probably is likely. But what in the world happens if you're able to sign Aaron Judge? You can see the giant pile of money behind him there. That's because it would take a really good amount to bring him here. But, obviously, is he open to playing here would be a big factor. You got to open the goddamn checkbook. Give him what he wants. This is a potential franchise-changing player. Just would really vault you into major contender status. And his stats here are really interesting. A 10.6 wins above replacement, 62 homers, obviously tying the AL home run record for a season, a 307 batting average, a 1.111 OPS, did not commit any errors this year in the outfield, a perfect fielding percentage, and 3 defensive runs saved. So an above league average league defender. We know what he can do with that power. If this move were to happen, I don't know what I would do. I mean, you can just think of any outfield, put any guy in left field. I don't care who you put in left field right now. You'd have Julio and Aaron Judge in the same outfield. That's like dreamland. I don't know what to tell you if that happens, but it's really about a lot of these. I know that the sort of perception is changing about Seattle as a free agency destination, but it's, firstly, does he want to be here? And then secondly, are you going to pay up? You'd have to pay up. I mean, to bring a guy like Aaron Judge here, the merge sales, first of all, would go insane. I know that. But yeah, so that would be, those are you're looking at the 4 sort of shortstops potentially moving to second base. You got to bring in a middle infielder. And then, hey, maybe you go into the Aaron Judge sweepstakes. Who knows? And then relief pitcher, I don't know if Seattle really wants to add to their bullpen. They've got a solid bullpen already. But just because he's going to be available and because he was one of my favorite relievers after his 2018 season, messed around with the idea of adding Edwin Diaz back to the bullpen. Could be a return in the mix for one of the best relievers in baseball, or is Seattle happy with their bullpen? I don't know. We look at last year's stats for him in this incredible Photoshop. I kid. Obviously, a return would be great. 3.2 wins above replacement, a 1.31 ERA, a 3-on-1 record, 32 saves, 118 strikeouts, and a .839 whip for Edwin last year. Obviously, there's the whole thing with the trumpets for the Mets in the big intro. But Edwin, I mean, can you think about the fact that if you're a hitter, you're playing Seattle late in the game, and you have to think about, am I going to face Andres Munoz or Edwin Diaz? I mean, come on. That would be a lot of fun. I just don't know if that's feasible. I don't know if that's something that's going to be in play for Seattle, or if Edwin would want to return to Seattle. So that's sort of our free agency look. It's going to be really interesting as things pick up. We'll obviously keep you updated as free agency nears and as we get, the rumor mill starts and actual free agents are getting signed. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll have our free agency tracker, and it'll be exciting. It'll be really exciting to keep along with that. So we look at some other team-related news. On the 26th, the team claimed right-handed pitcher Luke Weaver off of waivers from the Kansas City Royals. The 6'2" right-hander appeared in 26 major league games, with one start between the Arizona Diamondbacks and Kansas City Royals in 2022, going 1-1 with a 6.56 ERA, 29 earned runs over 35.2 innings pitched, with 38 strikeouts and 13 walks. Weaver was traded to the Royals from Arizona back on August 1st. In 14 games with KC, he went 0-0 with a 5.59 ERA, with 19 strikeouts and 8 walks. If you don't remember, Weaver was the guy on the Royals who had the sort of national anthem standoff with Robbie Ray that Ray eventually won, and now they're teammates. So as a corresponding move, outfielder Derek Hill was designated for assignment. So Weaver's been an interesting guy. People like his stuff. They kind of view him as a long reliever. And there's been the idea that he pushes out Chris Flexen from this team. I don't imagine so. But if that happens, Chris has been an incredible member of this team, from having a great year as a starter in 2021, have some solid starts this past year, and then being able to join the bullpen and do pretty well as a member of Los Bomberos. So we'll move over here to the 27th, as center fielder Julio Rodriguez and catcher Cal Raleigh were both nominated for Silver Slugger Awards at their respective positions. Raleigh led Major League catchers with 27 homers during the 2022 season, also setting a franchise record for the most homers in a season by a catcher, surpassing Mike Zunino's 25 back in 2017. Julio batted .284 for batting average with 84 runs, 25 doubles, 3 triples, 28 homers, 75 RBIs, 25 stolen bases, and and 40 walks, getting on base at a 345 clip, slugging .509 with an 853 OPS in 132 total games. If I'm being biased, I think both of these guys should win their awards, So I'm hoping that Kyle's able to win a Gold Glove and a Silver Slugger, and that Julio takes home Rookie of the Year and a Silver Slugger award. That would be great. So we look over to league-related notes here on the 25th. The Dodgers could be serious about acquiring Aaron Judge. I laugh about this because that would be absolutely ludicrous. The Judge sweepstakes are on, as LA is willing to let infielder Trey Turner walk in free agency and move Mookie Betts to second base in order to sign the outfielder. I don't think that'll happen. I do not think that will happen. I think that's ridiculous. We look over here to October 29th. Rob Manfred disputes Oakland Stadium plan. The MLB commissioner casts doubt on a new waterfront ballpark in Oakland, saying it just doesn't look like it's going to happen. So it looks like the Athletics could be moving away from Oakland. It's not like this wasn't something that people could see happening, but it's just disappointing that it's just disappointing, and that starts with ownership in Oakland, as well as, MLB probably wanting them to move them to a market like Vegas anyway. So, excuse me, I almost had to sneeze. That's just disappointing. So, it's interesting with MLB free agency because that begins right about after the All-Star, after the World Series ends. So we'll get on that as soon as that ends, but the World Series currently underway. We're 2 games in. It's 1-1. Philadelphia and Houston both have a game. Game 3 is actually tonight. So go Phillies. We look over to league notes here for the WNBA. Just some small stuff. Small note here. On the 20th, the WNBA announced that they will host a game in Canada next season. No further details than that, but interesting to see that the WNBA is coming to Canada. Maybe they have an expansion team announced potentially for Canada. Who knows? On the 25th, Brittany Griner's appeal was denied, and now she will be forced to serve a 9-year sentence in a penal colony. Griner has had her appeal denied over her drug conviction because Russia will count her time waiting. It'll be like 8 years and some change, but this is all still ridiculous. It's interesting because Russia in the past has convicted people, with several grams of THC or whatever it was for a way shorter, several grams. Brittany had less than a gram. So it's very obvious that she's being used as a tool here for Russia. And it's just really unfortunate. It's been a long, long time coming. And I remember when this started, Bill and I hoped that this would be resolved before the season started. And now we're here in October, the end of October. So just really hoping that something can be done here from the United States to figure it out. If it's just Russia being stubborn and not really wanting to be reasonable about things, I don't know what happens. I really don't know what happens. So we'll try to move over here to our Sounders-related news here. The team announced several roster decisions to conclude the 2022 season. Firstly, with 2023 options being picked up, Seattle picked up the options of Josh Atencio, A.B. Sissoko, Denny Leyva, Jordan Morris, Jackson Reagan, Dylan Tevez, and Andrew Thomas. No real surprises there here. We look over to the players that are currently under contract already. Oops, that is not correct. I will apologize, and I will do my best to pull that up here. But yeah, no really, with the 2023 options being picked up, all of that really makes sense. Shoot, I didn't download it. Okay, well, the 2020 players that are under contract include Javier Arviaga, Yamar Gomez Andrade, Reed Baker Whitting, Leo Chu, Stephen Cleveland, Ethan Doubleair, Stephen Fry, Nico Ladero, João Paulo, Nuhu, Alex Roldan, Christian Roldan, Kellen Rowe, Raul Rui Diaz, Albert Rusnak, and Obed Vargas. No surprises there, I imagine. You see a lot of the current Sounders already back on the team. we look at some guys that have different contract situations. Will Bruin and AOC Alfonso Campo Chavez both had their contract options declined. General Manager Garth Lagerwey spoke about the time Bruin and said that it's likely that they don't bring him back. He said that the door's not closed, but they're likely looking for another forward option. So we probably see Bruin back. Jimmy Medranda is out of a contract. Freddie Montero is in active discussion on a new deal. Sam Adeniran's status will be determined following the conclusion of San Antonio FC's postseason run, where he is currently out on loan. On the 28th, the Sounders signed midfielder SOTA KITAHARA to a first-team contract from the Tacoma Defiance. The former Academy and Tacoma Defiance midfielder signs a 2-year deal with club options in 2025 and 26. He becomes the 20th homegrown player in Sounders FC history. So welcome to the team, SOTA. That about wraps up our Sounders team news. On our league note for the MLS Cup matchup is set. The number 1 seeds, Philadelphia Union and LAFC, will square off to decide who wins the league this year. I would like to see Philly win it because I don't want to see LA win it. So I got to keep going here as our checkout time is approaching. Look over here to our Kraken-related news. We have 3 games over the past week. Starting on October 25th versus the Buffalo Sabres, a 5-1 win. I played the game forward Daniel Sprong with a goal, 2 assists, 3 points, and 4 shots. A really solid blowout win here over the Sabres team that I believe it also only lost 1 game, going 4-1 to this point before Seattle was really able to dominate. Versus the Canucks here, Seattle remains winless all-time in the regular season versus Vancouver with a 5-4 loss. But of the game forward, Jaden Schwartz, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, 2 shots, and 1 hit. October 29th versus the Pittsburgh Penguins, a 3-1 win. Player of the game forward, Jaden Schwartz, again, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, and 5 shots. You see that in the big win against Pittsburgh, and that will lead to Schwartz being my player of the week, totaling 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, and 10 shots on the past week here. I believe he leads the team in points. So Jaden really having a solid year for Seattle. Been a big key piece of the Seattle team. And, I mean, it's pretty – Seattle had a good week. I would say Seattle had a good week. It's frustrating to not be able to get that win over – Vancouver. You see how close it was. Seattle was able to bring it within 1 in the late stages. Just not able to do it. You got to figure out how to beat Vancouver, considering that you gave them their first win with that result. But pretty solid week. We look over to injury-related news here. On the 25th, the team placed goaltender Philip Grubauer on IR with a lower body injury officially. He is still considered day-to-day at the time, but it might seem that injury is unfortunately worse than it's been officially announced. Hoping that's not the case, but we'll see as the time goes on. In team-related news, on the 27th, the team signed goaltender Christopher Gibson to a 1-year, 2-way deal at a $750,000 annual AAV. So Gibson, some background Gibson, he has a 114, 72, 24 record all-time in AHL play. He is a member of the Stanley Cup winning Tampa Bay Lightning roster in 2020 to 2021. He played 1 game with Coachella Valley up to this point, so it might just be goaltender depth for Seattle here, as well as the fact that Joey Decourt is up with the NHL roster right now. So we look towards some league-related news here. On the 25th, Phil Kessel becomes the NHL's newest Iron Man. The Golden Knights forward sets an NHL record by playing in his 990th consecutive. That's just pretty ridiculous. So hats off to Kessel there. There are some pretty impressive stories by Kessel just about sort of his journey to this point. So look into that. You really should. We look over to record, and the Kraken sit at a 4-win, 4-loss, 2-overtime loss record. They are 4th in the Pacific Division with 10 points currently. They'll head on the road here for a road trip this upcoming week Looking ahead, November 1st at the Calgary Flames at a 6 p.m. Pacific time start. November 3rd at the Minnesota Wild, 5 p.m. Pacific time start. And November 5th at the Pittsburgh Penguins. Seeing these Penguins again, on the 5th is a 4 p.m. start here. So we look over to the OL Reign here in our season in review. Really just a tough season. I'm sure we'll talk about it more next week when we've got more time and a better recording situation here. But, for MVP, just Fishlock really is the heartbeat of this team in the midfield, whether it's, the leadership that she provides, the fire that she provides, just the glue in the midfield. Just with her performance, I went with Megan Rapinoe for our team MVP here in our season in review, leading the team in points with 11, 7 goals, and 4 assists. The second half from Rapinoe really ignited a fire in this team. I felt like, totaling a goal or an assist in several games after a return from an international break. I believe it was after the CONCACAF Women's Tournament. Just an incredible, this is the wrong graphic. There we go. Was just really valuable for this Reign club and really helped push them into the playoffs here. Unfortunately, obviously not being able to get the big one, but just really encouraging to see this sort of performance from Pino, and really, really valuable. Really helped this team that had some finishing issues for a long time be able to put a bunch in. For Offensive Player of the Year, as you can see, I went with Bethany Balcer, tied for the team lead in goals for the third year in a row, not including 2020 because that year was really odd. Balcer has led the team in goals tied this year, but just Bethany year in and year out, having won the Rookie of the Year award in 2019. Balcer has been pretty invaluable to this team, really solid attacker up front. And just having her and Jordan Heitzema and Megan Rapinoe all together is really, we're really lucky here to have all those together. For Defender of the Year, I went with Sofia Huerta. Huerta was able to stay really disciplined, only getting 1 card on the year, and also was able to really add on the defensive end with 1 goal and 4 assists. Her crosses are team and helped make a great back 4 up for this club. I could have gone with Alana Cook here. Sam Hyatt had a solid year. Lou Barnes, all 4 of the back line were really solid for the Reign. But because of her offensive input, I went with outside wingback Sofia Huerta. For a Newcomer of the Year, I went with Jordan Heitzema. I feel like it makes the most sense here just because of the potential that she brings to this team. The 21-year-old will only go up from here as she gets acclimated to the club. She recorded 2 goals and 2 assists in her late stages with the Reign, but I just think that getting this offseason with her, with the team, with the staff, she'll have a really good 2023. I'm going to say that now. So we look to some areas to improve here for the Reign. I think, getting some finishing, you have to be able to finish better than you did this past year. I think if you did, you won the league, but it was something that, showed up in the semifinal match. You couldn't finish as well as you'd like to, and that hurt you in a bunch of games this past year. So I think finishing is an area that this team needs to work on, and some defender depth potentially. I know that, Sydney Claire Miramontes was out. The team had Phoebe McLernan. But, sometimes those additions were rocky. They did their job for a good amount of the time, but if I had to, this team doesn't have much to improve on, really. But if I had to pick things, I think finishing's clear and above it, and maybe defender depth. But outside of that, I think this team is pretty well set. The potential departure side of things, Tobin Heath is a really interesting topic of conversation. I know that there have been rumors that Tobin wants to go down to LA to join Kristen Press. I would imagine that's the most likely outcome here. But it just seemed like when Tobin was here in Seattle, had a good amount of fun, seemed like they were enjoying themselves, seemed to get along well with the coaching staff and the players. So maybe there is a return in the mix. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I'm imagine we see Heath head down to LA. That's what I imagine. And for 2023 prediction, I think the Reign can win it all. I really think they could. I think they should have won it this year. But I think that if you're able to get Haidam a really acclimated. We're gonna acclimated. Get really used to this team. Maybe add some defender depth and really solidify yourselves. I think this team can really finally get over the hump. I know that I could have said that about them this year, but there was no reason really that they shouldn't have been in this year outside of the way that they played. So, we'll look over here to team-related news. On the 25th, 5 Reign players were named to the NWSL Best 11 first and second teams. On the first team side of things, defenders Alana Cook and Sofia Huerta. Cook started in all of the regular season matches she appeared in this year, with her lockdown defending, recording the stats: 78 clearances, 14 blocks, and 47 interceptions. Huerta appeared in 19 regular season matches, completing more than 675 passes, blocking 10 shots, and intercepting 12 feeds. On the second team, Rose Lavelle and Jess Fishlock at the midfield position here. Lavelle started in starting in all 17 of her appearances during the regular season. Rose tallied 5 goals and 1 assist, leading the team in shots at 48, winning 97 duels and being named to the NWSL Best 11 in May, as well as September and October. Fishlock was the 2021 MVP, obviously, appeared in 19 regular season matches, contributing 4 goals and 2 assists, adding 35 chances created, 79 duels won, and 33 total shots. Rapinoe appeared in 14 regular season games, being involved in 11 of the team's 32 goals this season. Obviously, as we talked about, 7 goals, 4 assists, including 70 duels won, 34 chances created, and 34 shots. The Reign original was named the NWSL Player of the Month back in August, Player of the Week once, and was part of the NWSL Best 11 in August, and then September and October. On the 28th, it was announced that Quinn is signed through 2024, drafted back in 2017 as the highest drafted in NWSL history. Quinn has started 26 of 35 games playing after being acquired in 2019. She was acquired. Quinn, they were acquired back in 2019. Quinn has started in 26 of 35 games, played for the Reign in the regular season, tallying an assist, 1,086 successful passes, and 129 duels won. So good to get the midfielder locked up there. We look at league-related news. On the 27th, around the league, the NWSL announced their awards. MVP was Portland Sophia Smith, becoming the youngest regular season MVP in league history. Coach of the Year, San Diego swept the rest of the awards here. San Diego's Casey Stoney won Coach of the Year. San Diego's defender, Naomi Gurma, won Rookie and the Defender of the Year. And Goalkeeper of the Year was San Diego's Kaylin Sheridan. On the 29th, the Portland Thorns beat the Kansas City Current to win their 3rd NWSL title in club history. And to no one's surprise, league MVP Sophia Smith was named final MVP. So the Reign finished with a 11-4-7 record to wrap up our regular season in review. First in the NWSL with 40 total points. We're going to get to the wrapping up section here with the XFL section. So we finally know the team name and team logo. It's not that much different. Seattle will be called the Seattle SEADRAGONS of the XFL. You can see not too much of a difference really in the logos. It just looks like a different dragon. We'll look here towards the rest of the sort of graphics here. Some notes here about the emerald color of the dragon, the fire in the mouth of the dragon representing the team's fiery fans. If you want, you can pause and look at that here. We'll look at the other team names and logos around the league. The Arlington Renegades, the DC Defenders, the Houston Roughnecks, the Orlando Guardians, the San Antonio Brahmas, the Battlehawks, and the Vegas Vipers. So that will make up your 2023 XFL teams, 8 current teams, but our team, the one that we care about, will be the Seattle SEADRAGONS. We wrap up here with players. I went with Seattle Kraken's Jordan Eberle and Martin Jones, both become new fathers, welcoming new members to the family. Martin Jones, in his game after his wife gave birth, had an incredible game, only allowing 1 goal on 33 shots, saving 32 of those. And Eberle totaled a point in this game. No, he scored in the game on the day that his newest son was born. Bell with Geno Smith. The Seahawks are 5 wins away from 10, her original pick before the year for total on the season for Seattle. And Geno's been really efficient, so I don't blame her. So that's a solid pick. So I got to get out of here. But that has been your CSS on Converge for October 31st. Again, happy Halloween. I apologize. The conditions were not ideal, but I said we don't miss a show, and I didn't plan on missing it anyway. So until we see you next week in November, should be another exciting week. Here's the Seahawks and Kraken continue their seasons, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about our rain season review next week. So until I see you, do whatever you can to make today a great day.